Hi, Scott Jensen here. It's November 12th. Here in Minnesota, it's already dark and it's just 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's been a dreary day, cold, chilly, windy, with a little snow in the air. It's a perfect day to give somewhat of a dreary analysis of what happened 4 days ago in our elections. I've let it breathe. I've thought a lot about what happened 4 days ago. And wherever I go, people are asking me, what do you think, Doc? Today, I was at a restaurant for lunch, and a table of 10 with a baby, less than a year old, and some seniors, more than 65 years old, stopped me and said, hey, you fought the good fight. Thank you. Please don't quit. I stopped at the gas station, and I was just about to get back in my car after filling up my tank, and I heard someone holler, sir, sir. And I stopped and I looked, and it was a young man, probably 30 years my junior. And he said, are you Scott Jensen? I said, yes. And he said, you fought the good fight. I hope you don't quit. Do we have a chance? I looked at him and I thanked him and I said, that was nice of you to stop me. And yes, we do have a chance. And no, I won't quit. But no, you can't quit either. So I don't plan on doing a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking from here on regarding the election of November 8th, 2022. But I thought that I should put my thoughts down on the record. And some of what I say might not be entirely what you want to hear. But I don't believe in thought police, and I get to think my own thoughts. So if you just take a look at this poster right here, I'm going to read it to you. It says, risk. You cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So bear with me a few minutes while I help us hopefully take a risk and lose sight of the shore so that indeed we can discover new oceans. First off, I would say this. On the Republican side of the governor's race in Minnesota, we had a terrific team. The lead candidate, that would be me, made more than my share of blunders. I could have made better word choices and better metaphor choices, but I tried my best, and my running mate, Matt Burke, was a joyful warrior who committed an unbelievable amount of time to our campaign, and his family was right there with him. I would take my hat off to my wife, Mary. She was unbelievable. What did we accomplish? Well, we got more votes for a Republican governor than any time in Minnesota history. We raised more money, approximately $6 million, which is more money than any previous Republican governors ever raised. We had a team of some 3,000 to 4,000 volunteers. We had over 125,000 people join our email team. We had some 40,000 unique donations. We did telethons and even engaged in NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. For 2 consecutive years, I was at the state fair in Minnesota 12 days in a row. We created a movement. It was born of energy from all Minnesotans. We reached out to minorities weekly, if not daily. We reached out to millennials and Gen Zs, the same, weekly, if not daily. And we tried to elevate the voice of moms and dads and parents. And we tried to stand for health freedom throughout the entire campaign. Health freedom, parental rights. We tried to capture the energy and concern of so many Minnesotans. We focused on the issue of inflation and the issue of crime and the issue of what kind of education our kids getting. And you know what? We got beat. We lost. Frankly, I got smoked by almost 200,000 votes. There was no red wave in Minnesota. There was a blue wave. And if we don't have the courage to acknowledge that, we may as well keep our head in the sand, because that's where it is right now. That'd be my comments to the Republicans. To the Democrats, what would I tell you? I would say congratulations. Congratulations to Tim Walz and his team for creating a strategy that won you re-election. And I would also be remiss if I did not say congratulations to Ken Martin. He's the head of the Democratic Party in Minnesota, and he's a strategically clever individual who knew what his objectives were and carried them out. In Minnesota now, we have a Democratic governor, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic House. And it's going to give them, obviously, the opportunity to achieve many of their potentially long-standing initiatives. In regards to polls, I would say this. Too many people look at polls as some sort of predictive device, when actually what they are, at the end of the day, is a political tool. They're used for a variety of things, sometimes trickery. Sometimes a poll has little interest in predicting, but far more interest in impacting, if you will. And to the incumbents, to the incumbent President Joe Biden, who wasn't up for election, his strategy of, in the last month, pushing hard for loan forgiveness for students was interestingly and conveniently completely thrown out by the courts 2 days after the election. To Tim Walz, the incumbent governor running for re-election in Minnesota, he evidently was able to strike up a accord of agreement with former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, and Governor Walz assured Jesse Ventura that one of former Governor Ventura's key concerns, legalization of recreational marijuana, would be at the top of Governor Walz's list and would be something that he thought, Governor Walz thought, would be done. And that provided great reassurance to Governor Ventura, and he provided an endorsement which Governor Walz or his team had indicated initially had not been initiated or sought, but later on, former Governor Ventura, made it clear that Governor Walz's team had reached out to him. So the power of the incumbent is not insignificant. Frankly, what happened in this election is the Republicans played at the craps table with three big issues: inflation, crime, and education. They rolled the dice on these issues over and over again. Republicans in Minnesota, in many ways, ran from the issue of abortion. The Democrats, on the other hand, they played, if you will, roulette. They put all their chips on one number, and that number was abortion. And that's where the ball stopped, and they won. Polls deceived in some situations, and polls guided some people to the sweet spot in a campaign. The Democrats played roulette, and they won. The Republicans played craps, and they lost. In the future, I think the lesson is clear. At least it should be to Republicans. If you infringe on someone's freedom, you may well lose. You'll probably lose. When Roe v. Wade was overturned in June of 2022, hundreds of thousands and millions of Americans felt that that represented an encroachment on their freedom and their autonomy. And I understand that. I also understood that the Supreme Court wasn't declaring abortion legal or illegal, simply saying that in the United States Constitution, there wasn't enough verbiage to clearly indicate that it was an established right up to the level of viability. And so the Supreme Court said we're going to turn it back to the states. And prior to Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, she had referenced the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973 as an example of poor jurisprudence. And so this Supreme Court fixed it, though their timing certainly could not have been worse for the Republican Party. So here we are. I think the Republicans were devastated on election night. I don't think anybody predicted this. And if we don't learn from it, we're fools. So to the issue of abortion. Bill Clinton said in the 1990s, after our country had fought about this for 20, 30 years, let's make it safe, legal, and rare. In the 1980s, it wasn't uncommon in Minnesota to have 20,000 abortions a year. In 2020, it had been reduced to 10,000, a reduction by nearly 50%. If you go back and study the history of abortion as a medical procedure over the centuries, this has been a challenge for humans to determine what to do for a long, long time. To me, it has a resemblance to the challenge of how do we deal with capital punishment. Some of these challenging issues will never be agreed on by 100% of the people. So in the future, I believe that I am going to continue to be that pro-life physician who's delivered hundreds of babies, but I am going to be clear about something. I am personally pro-life. From a policy perspective, I am pro-woman. And what that means is for too long, we have not shared the responsibility of planning pregnancies and planning families with men and women across the board. I think we need to do that. And I've been clear, and I'll say it again. I think we need to do what the majority of countries in this world do, and that's have birth control pills available over the counter with a $10 per month maximum. I'm old enough in medicine that I have seen for too long women have to go in and undergo a relatively meaningless physical examination, vaginal speculum exam, and pap smear, which the United States Preventive Services Task Force has indicated is certainly not recommended any longer on an annual basis. It doesn't have to be started at the age of 18 or 21 or at the beginning of sexual activity. But this is what has happened in the past. And typically this would cost $300 or $400, potentially half a day of work or whatever a person did. I don't think we should be doing that anymore. But I do think we should be having paid maternity leave. I think that's something we can do, and I think we should. And for those women who find themselves in a situation where they're unexpectedly pregnant, I want them to have the full gamut of choices, including a smooth, easy pathway for adoption, if that's what they choose. I think we need to have an understanding that we share this responsibility, men and women alike. And the pro-life movement should not be about trying to determine what the sexual mores or behaviors are of an American country. I think having the morning after pill available in every medicine cabinet makes sense. It stops fertilization, and it allows people to not have their life turned upside down if a condom breaks. I think we should have stiffer penalties for crimes that target women, rape, carjacking, assault. I think we need to step up our game. I think I can be pro-life personally and pro-women from a policy perspective. I have no intention of running for anything in the future. But I think that Bill Clinton's words in the 1990s, safe, legal, and rare, resonate with an awful lot of folks. I think that going from 20,000 per year in Minnesota in 1980 to 10,000 is a lot less. I think a lot of people don't realize that 90% of abortions occur in the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. I think a lot of people don't realize that the majority of abortions occur without any procedure ever having been done, the use of medication. And my understanding of the law is that the medicines that are used to induce an abortion, according to FDA authorities, cannot be stopped by state line. I think what we need to do in the pro-life movement is we need to partner with the people who don't agree with us. And when we partner and say we're going to support women and we're going to do everything we can to make the consideration of abortion unnecessary, I think that may be how we take that 10,000 per year number down to 4,000 or 2,000 or 1,000. I think we have to recognize that not everybody agrees that life begins at conception. I think we have to recognize that there are fertilized eggs at the 4, 8, or 16 cellular stage in cryopreservative solutions, potentially awaiting implantation into a uterus. But those zygotes, those multicellular fertilized embryos, may not be used, may not ever be implanted, and yet they will be there until they're disposed of. But at some point in time, they will be disposed of. I believe that cellular technology is going to allow us to take stem cells, potentially, from a variety of parts of our body, and have those stem cells stimulated in a way by enzymatic processes whereby we will be able to create human livers and kidneys and bone marrow and potentially even a full-blown human creature. And if we don't bring those stem cells to fruition as a full human creature, have we committed some sort of abortive process? These are challenging conversations, and I certainly don't have the answer. But I know this. This election cycle was not about inflation and crime and education. Not at the end of the day. For so many Americans across the country, with a few exceptions, if you will, this election was, for many, about, if you will, an intrusion into a person's autonomy. And if we can't have that hard, honest conversation, we're not being honest with ourselves. We're howling at the moon. Howling at the moon. Wasting time trying to get what you can't get. I'm not interested in howling at the moon. I'm interested in reducing crime and making sure our kids get a good education. And also fighting back against inflation. When I was campaigning, our message focused on uniting because a new normal was developing. And I wanted that new normal to be born of common sense. And I wanted more than 50% of the American citizens, and specifically the Minnesota residents, to agree that that indeed is what we needed to do, is come together and create a new normal together. I thought that economy could be fought against with better policies, and I thought crime could be fought against by elevating and respecting the work police do. And I thought that our education system can stop hypersexualizing children, and it would be better. But I lost. I thought the election would be about hearts and minds as it focused on children and crime and inflation. But it was on hearts and minds, all right. But it was on hearts and minds regarding an intrusion into autonomy. Let's make no mistake about that. Our campaign fought to find heroes, and we found heroes. Our campaign was absolutely embedded with heroic efforts like I could never have believed. And I will go to my grave with a great appreciation for the people who joined our team and helped us run this incredibly strong campaign. Our campaign was about healing Minnesota. But I don't think we accomplished that. I think we did accomplish spurring people on to participation at every level, whether you're talking school board, city council, township boards, county commissioners, House and Senate races. I think that Minnesotans and Americans are engaged, and that gives me hope. There can be no quitting, not for any of us, Republicans, Democrats alike. There can be no returning to the sidelines. Americans, Minnesotans, whether you like it or not, we need to be in the arena. We need to take the slings and the arrows, and there'll be people out there who will be more than glad to throw them and, if you will, harpoon one another. But I think what we really need to do is going forward, we need to stop thinking that the way we see the world is the only way to see the world. The Republicans expected a red wave, and we got nothing like that. What we need to do now, Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, is if we find someone that we're talking with that we disagree with, instead of shaking our head and pummeling them with our perspective, we need to nod our head, express an inquisitiveness with our eyes, specifically ask, help me understand where you're coming from because I can't get my arms around where you're at. And then we need to talk. And we need to try to understand. And we need to understand that if Minnesota, if America is going to heal, we have absolutely got to each participate. Because if we don't, all we're doing is howling at the moon. And it will get us nothing. But if we do, we might feel like we're howling at the moon, but we might be moving the needle. And at the end of the day, if somehow we can start to get that needle to point true north in a direction where America's founding occurred, then all of what we've gone through this last election cycle, all of what my wife and I have given up, it will not have been for naught. It will have been for something. And people will not be able to call us victims of simply howling at the moon. Thanks.